What if I told you that some of the most iconic characters in The Lord of the Rings have already been recast multiple times and most fans did not even notice it? As the world of Middle-earth keeps expanding across movies and shows, familiar faces are returning in completely new forms, played by different actors at different stages of their lives. This is not just a random change. It is happening because the timeline of Middle-earth is massive, and newer projects are exploring events that happened long before or after the original trilogy. That means younger versions, older versions, and sometimes entirely reimagined versions of characters are needed, which naturally leads to recasting across different adaptations. Let's start with one of the wisest elves in Middle-earth, Círdan. He had only a brief appearance in the original films, played by Michael Ellsworth, but his role becomes much larger in The Rings of Power, where he is now portrayed by Ben Daniels. This shift allows the character to finally explore his importance beyond a simple background presence. Next is Elendil, a key figure in the history of men. In the original trilogy, he appeared briefly and was played by Peter Mackenzie. However, in newer stories like The Rings of Power, he takes on a central role, now played by Lloyd Owen, giving audiences a deeper look at his leadership and legacy before the Great Wars of Middle-earth. Then we have Elrond, one of the most recognizable faces in the franchise. Hugo Weaving made the role iconic in the films, portraying a calm and wise leader. But in The Rings of Power, a younger version of Elrond is played by Robert Aramayo, showing a more ambitious and evolving character who has not yet reached the wisdom fans remember. A similar transformation happens with Isildur. In the original films, he is known mostly for his fateful decision with the One Ring, played by Harry Sinclair. In newer adaptations, Maxime Baldry steps into the role, giving us a much more detailed and human look at the man behind one of Middle-earth's most important moments. Another character who has quietly been recast is Gil-galad, the High King of the Elves. Originally portrayed by Mark Ferguson in a short but powerful appearance, he now has a much bigger presence in The Rings of Power, played by Benjamin Walker. This version expands his leadership and influence during the early battles against Sauron. Now let's talk about one of the most powerful and beloved characters in the entire franchise, Galadriel. Cate Blanchett defined the role with grace and mystery in the films. However, a younger and more battle-driven version appears in The Rings of Power, played by Morfydd Clark, offering a completely different side of the same character that fans had never seen before. The case of Bilbo Baggins is slightly different but just as important. Ian Holm played the older Bilbo in the original trilogy, while Martin Freeman took over as a younger version in the Hobbit films. This recasting worked perfectly because it showed Bilbo at two very different stages of his life without breaking continuity. Now we come to one of the most iconic characters ever created, Gandalf. Ian McKellen became synonymous with the role across both trilogies. But in The Rings of Power, a mysterious figure known as the Stranger, played by Daniel Wayman, is eventually revealed to be Gandalf, marking a subtle but significant recasting of the legendary wizard. Finally, there is Aragorn, the future king of Gondor. Viggo Mortensen made the character unforgettable in the original films. However, with upcoming projects like The Hunt for Gollum focusing on earlier timelines, a younger Aragorn will be introduced with a completely new actor stepping into the role. What makes all these recasts interesting is that they are not replacing the originals but expanding the timeline. Each version adds a new layer to the character, showing how they changed over time. Instead of erasing the past, these recastings build on it, allowing the world of Middle-earth to feel bigger and more alive than ever before. At the same time, this approach also carries a challenge. Fans have strong emotional connections to the original actors, and any change can feel risky. But when done right, like with Elrond or Galadriel, it gives the audience a fresh perspective without losing the essence of the character. As new films and series continue to explore Middle-earth, more recasts are almost guaranteed. The timeline is simply too vast to rely on the same actors for every story. That means we are likely to see even more familiar names return with new faces, new interpretations, and new stories to tell. Which recast surprised you the most, and which one do you think worked better than the original? Drop your thoughts in the comments and follow for more Lord of the Rings updates.